Twinkies, Little Debbie, Pop Rocks, Cheetos, Lunchables. No, this isn't an updated rendition of my favorite things from The Sound of Music. It's a history of our nation's favorite junk food. For the best way to understand America is not by looking into the hearts and minds of its citizens, but by the content of their snack box. Today on Weird History Food, we're talking America's favorite junk food through the decades. But before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel and let us know in the comments below what other snack food topics you would like to hear about. Okay, don't tell a dentist about this video. 4 out of 5 of them won't recommend it. Junk food as we know it today really began at the turn of the century. The dawn of the Industrial Revolution really gave mass-produced snacks their legs. So what was our nation's very first confection? Something to go along with America's favorite sport, Cracker Jack, as featured in America's enduring banger, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. You'd think that in 120 years, there would have been some experimentation with the recipe. But if combining popcorn, molasses, and peanuts together into a hardened sludge that will crack your teeth ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, except your teeth. That'll need a new crown. Cracker Jack was sold at the Chicago World's Fair in the late 19th century and got such rave reviews that it was repackaged for mass distribution across the land. Fast forward to 1900, when public speaker Francis Woodward procured the formula for flavored gelatin. He marketed it as Jell-O, and boy, did the country go nuts for it. A 1902 advertisement in Ladies' Home Journal referred to it as America's most famous dessert. Not for nothing, but these types of women's magazines weren't exactly impartial judges. Have you seen how many ways they found to slide Jell-O into otherwise normal recipes back then? Mini hot dogs in Jell-O? Oof. Not long after Jell-O came the Tootsie Roll in 1905, a tiny tube of chocolate taffy that only cost 1 cent. Tootsie Roll also had a hygienic novelty. It was the first individually wrapped candy. Wrapping up the aughts, Hershey's chocolate began as a harebrained enterprise by none other than popular carameler Milton B. Hershey. After inventing and patenting his own proprietary milk process to develop chocolate, Hershey founded a chocolate plant in Pennsylvania. In 1905, the first product of the plant began rolling off the assembly line, the Hershey's Chocolate Bar. Back at a simpler time before all the world wars, things were easier, especially copyright infringement. Take Oreo, one of the most popular cookies in America. The cream cookie sandwich is actually a direct copy of a pre-existing cookie, the Hydrox. In fact, Oreo just had one major difference from its Hydrox: lard. That's right, Oreos had lard in them. Lard is what makes anything delicious. Depending on what part of the country you live in, you might swear allegiance to Hostess or Tasty Cakes. And before you say, "But I don't eat sweets," just answer, there is no third option. Tasty Cakes entered the market in 1914, aiming for the chocolate cupcake crowd. Hostess followed a few years later in 1919, launching the beginnings of a nascent sponge cake empire, which would grow to include ding-dongs, snowballs, and of course, the mighty Twinkie. Unlike the Hostess cupcakes of today, the earliest ones were just plain cupcakes. They wouldn't get their signature squiggly lines of vanilla frosting for another 40 years. Various marshmallow pastes can be found in late 19th century regional cookbooks, showing that even before mass production was a thing, people found a way to consume empty calories. But it wasn't until 1917 that Massachusetts native Archibald Query patented a marshmallow fluff spread, followed 1 year later by his revolutionary Fluffernutter. On the other end of the caloric spectrum, Peppermint Lifesavers hit the shelves in 1912. Following up on the previous decade's invention of individually wrapped penny candies, Lifesavers were ensconced in shiny foil wrappers. Originally, they were shaped like solid white discs. The holes wouldn't enter the picture until 1925. Extra, extra, read all about it. It's 1920, and the decade's first hit is the indescribably delicious Mounds Bar. Composed of dark chocolate and coconut, Mounds was invented by Vincent Nitito and sold to the Peter Paul Candy Company in 1929, who also produced Almond Joys, which, as we all know, are just Mounds bars with a big almond in the middle. It's called knowing your audience. 11-year-old Frank W. Epperson accidentally invented a cold, tasty treat when he left powdered soda on his frozen front porch overnight, with the mixing stick still stuck in the packet. In 1923, Epperson patented his creation, the Epsicle, which his children helpfully redubbed the Popsicle. Harry Burnett Reese was a Hershey dairy farmer and foreman who had his own idea for a delicious bowl-shaped candy in 1928 and left to make his dream a reality. His peanut butter cups were an immediate smash hit, and after he died, his 6 sons sold their dad's product to Hershey's for shares worth $3.6 billion. But Reese wasn't the only guy out there with big ideas for peanuts. In 1920, Otto Y. Schnaring dropped batches of his candy creation out of a chartered plane, showering 40 states with candy bars made of peanut, caramel, and nougat. That was the day it rained Baby Ruths, which Schnaring named after his favorite baseball player. But the truly miraculous part of his story was that his stunt didn't manage to maim anyone. Imagine being taken out by an airborne candy bar in the 1920s. First the stock market, now this. In the 1930s, World War II was underway, and people had to get creative with their cooking habits. James A. Dewar had noticed how underused shortcake pans were outside of strawberry season, and began filling those neglected pans with banana filling. When WW2 led to a rationing of bananas, the filling was subbed in with vanilla. Voila! Twinkies. Anyone who lives in the Delmarva region knows the tale of Herman J. Lay, the Willy Wonka of savory delicacies, who introduced America to the potato chip bearing his name in 1938. 20 years later, Lay would team up with Charles Elmer Doolin of the Frito Company to merge into the Frito-Lay conglomerate, cornering the market on salty snacks. The 30s were also a bopping time for Frank Mars, founder of Mars, Inc. And you thought they were named after the planet. It's easy to get confused. After all, it was Frank Mars who introduced the world to his son's chocolate concept, the Milky Way. His son was Forrest, by the way, not Bruno. The Milky Way opened the soft nougat floodgates, and Mars perfected the practice with his 1930 Snickers bar, followed 2 years later by Three Musketeers. Both featured a nougat filling, though Snickers had an additional caramel and peanut center. Melts in your mouth, not in your hand, wasn't just someone trying to be cute in M&M's slogan department. The 1941 confection resulted from a wartime necessity, as Mars began producing hard-coated candies that could withstand overseas travel and store for the troops. Russian immigrant Samuel Bourne was already a well-known name in America's candy biz, thanks to his Bourne sucker machine that inserted sticks into lollipops. But he really broke out with his elongated jelly beans, Mike and Ike's, which came in fruit and cinnamon spice flavors. Although we all can agree cinnamon spice is the worst flavor. Is that one Mike or Ike? By the end of World War II, Dairy Queen was open for business, serving sweet and savory delights. Frito, minus the Lays, that deal was still in the future, delved into new types of corn snacks through the 1940s, most notably Cheetos. Developed in 1948, Cheetos were made with extruded corn, blasted with cheese powder, leading to a rise in cheese puff copycats soon after, forever dooming the keyboards of future generations. The end of World War II meant a boom season for America's new favorite pastime, gulping down as much fast food as possible. McDonald's, Jack in the Box, Taco Bell, and Kentucky Fried Chicken all became household names, a testament to the ever-expanding, or shrinking, palate of the average American. And the first national donut chain appeared in 1955, when Bill Rosenberg franchised his Dunkin' Donuts shop. The rise of pizza chains followed a similar trajectory. The Italian dish was considered an exotic novelty until brothers Dan and Frank Carney began franchising their dine-in pizza parlor in 1959. Pizza Hut, the very first mainstream American pizza, began in a Kansas restaurant. Back in those days, the pizza came in 2 sizes, 95 cents for a small and $1 for a large. And since there was no delivery, you had to walk in the snow, uphill, both ways to get it. Kraft food scientist Edwin Treisman was a huge influence in fast food innovation. For example, we have him to thank for the freeze-dried method that keeps McDonald's fries crispy. But his greatest invention was taking cheese and emulsifiers and loading them into an aerosol can. That chemical sorcery led to one of the most American foods of all time, Cheez Whiz. McKee Foods entered the ring in 1960 with their individually wrapped Little Debbie snack cakes, which to this day has kept its nostalgic packaging. Meanwhile, Hunt's snack packs, which became lunchroom staples in 1968 when they began selling in individual containers, were originally stored in pull-tab aluminum cans until 1984.
Open it carefully now.
In 1963, Nabisco introduced the world to Chips Ahoy, which would become the most popular brand of chocolate chip cookies of all time, and the third most popular American cookie ever, number one being Nabisco's own Oreos. Chips Ahoy marketing included their Superman-ish mascot, Cookie Man, who valiantly fought villains like Fruit Fly and Bigwig, and had a chocolate chip counting alter ego, Mort Meek. Can't wait to see Zack Snyder adapt that story. One of the biggest innovations in baked goods during the 60s was Kellogg Pop-Tart, which introduced America to a pastry crust with a sweet filling that could be popped into a toaster. Meanwhile, on the salty end of things, Frito-Lay's merger had led to one of their most popular products yet, Doritos. Released in 1966, by the end of the year, the stale corn chip covered in cheese dust was the second most popular snack in the country. The 1970s was a banner decade for snack foods. Pringles wowed the potato chip world by introducing dehydrated and reconstituted potato slices that could be stacked and sold in tubes. Ring Pops became a fashionable treat in 1975, after Topps engineer Frank Richards needed an ingenious way for his daughter to stop sucking her thumb. Pop Rocks were another curiously crackly carbonated creation only the 70s could have produced. Developed by General Foods chemists in 1956, it took 2 decades until it finally hit shelves. After debuting in 1975, Pop Rocks enjoyed a 7-year run before rumors of a fatal reaction with soda saw the candy pulled for a decade in the 80s. Ice cream would never be the same after Vermont natives Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield opened their flagship ice cream parlor in South Burlington in 1978. Cohen suffered from anosmia, a complete lack of smell and therefore taste. He relied solely on what kids today called mouthfeels to determine the quality of his cream. That led to the pair experimenting with different textured treats and snacks incorporated into their product, leading to the most punny concoctions in dessert history. When Reese's Pieces came onto the scene in 1980, it was viewed as the red-headed stepchild in the Reese's dynasty, a relatively obscured offering outshadowed by the peanut butter cup. That all changed in 1982 when the snacks were featured in E.T., the Extraterrestrial. Originally, Spielberg had tried to get M&Ms, but Mars turned him down. Probably should have phoned home about that one. Fruit candies also had a renaissance. Sour Patch Kids, developed in Canada in the 1970s, were originally shaped like aliens. They changed shape when they hit American shelves in 1985, as a direct result with the cultural obsession with Cabbage Patch Kids. Skittles were another international invention, created by the Brits in 1974. It wasn't until the Wrigley Company purchased the brand in 1982 that Americans could taste the rainbow. Nabisco's Teddy Grahams, debuting in 1988, were marketed as the healthy cookie option for children. Not sure why, maybe because they're so small. We can also thank the 80s for the rise in microwavable frozen snack options. Pizza rolls, invented in 1951 by Gene Palucci, didn't become a household staple until 1985, when Pillsbury acquired the brand. What better treat for the end of the snack century than Dunkaroos, Betty Crocker's mad experiment that flew in the face of conventional cookie frosting logic. Unlike most of the other entries on this list, Dunkaroos are no longer around, having been discontinued in 2012. Wah wah. Probably because each package came with cookies and a separate, sealed dipping cup of pure frosting. Naturally, kids caught on pretty quickly that this design allowed for a cookie-optional dining experience, and mainlined straight sugar into their veins, which is probably why it's no longer available to purchase. 2 fruity fan favorites during the 90s were also Betty Crocker Originals, Fruit by the Foot and Gushers. Both showed up in 1991, though the idea of dehydrating fruit into leathery strips has been around since before the invention of language. Even so, fruit by the foot was clearly modeled around fruit roll-ups, which had been patented a decade prior. Gushers were individual packets of fruit gummies filled with a sweet, oozy syrup. If your parents were trying to keep up the appearance of giving you a well-rounded lunchbox, you might be familiar with Go-Gurt. Originally billed as Canadian Yoplait tubes, that's an unfortunate name, they first hit American shelves in 1998, appealing to busy kids on the go who didn't have time for spoons. And finally, Lunchables. The TV dinners of the afternoon were created after lunch meat lobbyists from Oscar Mayer petitioned Kraft to find a way to boost sales for Big Bologna. This ham-fisted agenda owed a debt to the rise of working moms, who suddenly had less time to prepare lunches for kids, who frankly would rather be dipping their snouts in pure frosting. It all created the perfect storm for the pre-packaged lunch revolution, which eventually expanded to 30 variations, including nuggets, pizzas, tiny burgers, and nachos. You know, the 4 basic food groups. So what do you think? What was your favorite junk food? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other videos from Weird History Food.